Everyone has a story. Stories have power. They help us understand. Jessop's Journal is a collection of powerful, positive, and inspirational stories. It's time for Jessop's Journal.
Hi, I'm Doug Jessop. Welcome to this episode of Jessop's Journal, where we share powerful, positive, and inspirational stories in music. Up first is a woman making a powerful impact as a female CEO.
I want to be someone who helps to find a solution and then be part of implementing that solution.
Lorene Boutner has a positive story of connecting people and plants in a special way.
The mission statement of my life is to connect people and plants and do it in the funnest way possible.
We opened the vault to the caring stories, a set of inspirational stories that I've been able to do over the years.
Big cheers. Nothing like being taught a cheer by Sydney.
Musical guest Pixie and the Party Grass Boys entertain us. Of course, don't forget one of my favorite passion projects, Objects with Stories are Treasures Remembered.
It was made at the height of stained glass making in technique and quality in America by the greatest maker who arguably ever made work in stained glass.
In today's Jessop's Journeys, we're hopping on a train to explore the world at your leisure. We're going to see the world's first patented motor car. We're going to the Mercedes-Benz Museum in Stuttgart, Germany. Carl Benz developed his first stationary gasoline engine, a one-stroke, two-cylinder unit that ran for the first time on New Year's Eve in 1879. Carl Benz filed for his first patent in January of 1886, and it was described as, quote, a vehicle powered by a gasoline engine. It's interesting to note that the first car he built was a three-wheeled vehicle. The idea of a motor car wasn't getting much traction with the public, and so Carl's wife, Bertha Benz, that really was her name, took their two teenage sons for a ride to her hometown and back, about 180 kilometers. FYI, Carl did not know that his wife did this, but it did become the world's first long-distance journey in an automobile and silenced doubters and sparked the success of the automobile. Just saying, sounds like something that Rio Rossi Booth would do.
This is crazy fun!
With that said, I'm not sure that Mercedes makes monster trucks. In 1893, Carl patented what would be considered one of the most important things in automobile technology, the double pivot steering system. Why is that important? Because it made four-wheeled cars like this Benz Velo possible. Here's some trivia for you. The name Mercedes came from the daughter of a client that commissioned a race car to be built. The Mercedes 35 HP debuted at the 1901 Nice Race Week. The Mercedes star logo has been used since 1909. It stands for mobility on, get this, land, on water, and in the air. I know you're not supposed to have favorite kids, but I have to admit that the Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Gullwing, unveiled as a racing car prototype back in 1952, took my breath away. It was easy to imagine James Bond sliding into the red leather seats. On a side note, Chad Booth told me that one of his neighbors used to have one. Lucky. The company grew in the 1950s on the strength of commercial vehicles and the fact that they had a near monopoly on the manufacture of diesel engines. It didn't hurt that they also made trucks to carry some of their phenomenal race cars. While we're on the subject of racing, with 9 levels of car displays, the race car section in the Mercedes-Benz Museum looked like the coolest Hot Wheel collection ever, even from a distance. But up close, it was even better, with over 100 years of some of the fastest cars ever built. Mercedes continues to be associated with luxury brands. The goal for the future is to be a major player in the electric vehicle space. On a side note, they're also surprisingly good at putting cars on walls. With another entry into Jessop's Journeys, people, places, and things you might not know about, broadcasting from the Mercedes-Benz Museum in Stuttgart, Germany, I'm Doug Jessop. I found out about you in a couple different ways. One is an interesting thing with one of your kids, but the other one, I come to find out that you are the CEO of a company. And I'm going, okay, I gotta talk to this lady. Tell me a little bit about what company you are with.
I'm with Squire & Company. Okay. We're a CPA firm here in Utah. We are one of the largest locally owned firms in Utah. We have 2 offices, an office in Orem, one in downtown Salt Lake, and we have approximately 180 employees. We've got 24 partners.
Let's kind of go back a little bit. I looked at a picture once, and I saw one with you and your dad. You know which one I'm talking about?
Yep, I do.
Tell me about that.
So my dad was an accountant. He actually worked as a controller for a company, but on the side he did public accounting type work. He did tax returns at home. And so when I was little, I used to sit by him at the table and I would do tax returns with him. And I had, the yellow pad of note paper, had his 10 key, and I would do taxes. And so we have this picture of me sitting by my dad by his elbow, learning to do taxes. Really, I was just playing with the tape, and I like to get as many numbers on there as I could, take it out, staple it, put it on as a nurse's hat. But that was where I fell in love with accounting and helping people with that problem. People would come into our home, meet with my dad, go over their business taxes. He would help them and deliver that. And so from a really young age, I saw that on a micro level, and it became something I was very interested in doing.
You're a female CEO. Has that ever created any challenges? Because I'm not seeing a lot of female CPAs, number one,
right,
and let alone ones that have the top chair.
Definitely a challenge to get there. For one, there was no one there that looked like me. Right, so I looked at this partnership group, and when I joined the firm, that was 6 partners, and then it became 8, and then 10. And when I joined, there was another, one of my other partners became a partner at the same time as me, and so we were number 13 and 14. And I looked at that group, and there were no women. So then you ask yourself the question, is that bias, or is that not? And what research is really showing in the accounting profession, and it probably applies to all professions, is that when you don't see someone that looks like you tend to self-select out. And so in the accounting profession, we find a lot of women who don't see women at the top and think there must not be a path for me, and they self-select out and do something different. And so I really started asking a lot of questions. Why isn't someone there? Is it something about work-life balance that could get in the way? Is there a bias? And what I really found is that the women before me in the firm had self-selected out, that there had been other females ahead of me who had had the opportunity and had chosen, for whatever reason, not to stay in the firm. And so then you look at it as well, and then you decide, okay, I can be there, but then who's really going to mentor you? And so, for example, I was working with a mentor that I was assigned, who was an amazing mentor, and he did a lot for me. And we were having a conversation one day, and I looked at him and I said, well, what do you do when your kids are sick? And he's like, he just kind of looked stunned. And he said, I've never thought of that. My wife just takes care of that.
Right.
And I owe him so much, because he really said then, he said, Janice, that's a good question, and we should be able to help you with it. But we don't have someone here that looks like you. It's maybe not the exact wording he used, but, and he encouraged me to go find a mentor outside of our firm, which sometimes, people think that's not necessarily a great thing, but he encouraged me to find a mentor outside of my firm, and I was able to find a partner in a law firm, actually in Salt Lake, and she gave me great advice. She coached me on conversations to have with the partners. She held me accountable to have hard conversations, and I was finally given that mentorship that helped me to stay in my firm and make it to the top.
One of my favorite inspirational quotes is from Audrey Hepburn. She said, "To plant a garden is to believe in tomorrow." This is Doug Jessop. Watch TV Garden Guy Thursdays and Fridays during Good Things Utah. Over the years, I've been able to do a lot of cool stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. I call them the caring stories. Well, we opened the vault today to show one of my favorites. There's a phrase that says, "A picture is worth 1,000 words." Well, Sydney Cooper's smile is worth 1,000,000.
7 hit 1.
My name is Sydney Cooper. I am a cheerleader.
Good job, Sid. Good job. Yeah.
Okay, what do I do?
Just hold it, and I'm doing that way.
Big cheer.
Nothing like being taught a cheer by Sydney.
No problem.
Sydney is a junior at Viewmont High School. She was born with Down syndrome. Erin McQuivey with Primary Children's Hospital explains.
It means that they're just like anyone else, but that they have this special extra chromosome. Different isn't a bad thing. It just means that they have special abilities and different abilities, but those abilities have value as well.
Sydney's family and friends admire those abilities.
How brave she is. She is always willing to try things. She has performed in front of people that she doesn't know. She is never afraid to do something new.
In the home of the brave.
Vikings! 5, 6, 7, 8. Sydney!
Love you, Sid.
I love you more.
Love you most, sis.
Something magical happens when you add just a little bit of pixie dust to a song. It's time for Jessop's Jukebox with Pixie and the Party Grass Boys.
Everyone around you is losing their head, and I will be beside you, remind you what you said. From the warmth and comfort of our first real bed, and when you put your head down, your finger ran down my neck. Life is like a river, we just, he's floating on by. Sometimes we drift together for miles, side by side. Sometimes we drift apart, like a river, keeps on running no matter how you try. And I am falling into your arms again. They are calling to arms again. You a face, sing you a voice, write you a story, and I would like to be the one, be the love, be the glory, and I would like to paint you a face, sing you a voice, write you a story, and I would like to be the one, be the love, be the glory. you a face, sing you a voice, write you a story. And I would like to be the one, be the love, be the glory.
Here's the story behind my phrase, life never boring. My wife had dated a guy before we got together, and she was telling me about this, and he said, he's a nice guy, but he was boring. So I put my arm around her shoulder. I said, honey, you stick with me, and life will never be boring. Well, now every once in a while when things get a little crazy, we look at each other, wink, and say, life's never boring. Where is Doug broadcasting from next? FollowDoug.com. By now you know that I have a whole bunch of hats, and they all have names. This one, it's plant related. Yeah, it's called the aspen. Our next guest has a positive motto. Every day is a great day. Today, I'm with Lorene Boutner. We share a whole bunch of different interests, and one of those that I would say is we're both plant geeks.
Of course.
Yeah, that's all the stuff. So I'll let you give a shameless plug as to why we know each other plant-wise.
Well, as you know, every day is a great day at Mill Creek Gardens, and when you come in, you are always lit up like a banner, and you're searching for those beautiful plants for your yard as well as for the set here at the station. And besides every day is a great day at Mill Creek Gardens, there's also plants and people and connections to be made. And that's part of the mission statement of my life, is to connect people and plants and do it in the funnest way possible.
And you definitely do that. Was there somebody that helped you get that spark of loving plants?
Well, there was many, but there's just a wonderful experience I've had with my grandmother in her gardens. And she had the most amazing garden with things like hibiscus, bleeding hearts, cranesbill wild geranium, burning bush, which is the beautiful fall color big shrub. She had a small hedge of those in her yard, and she planted bulbs. And it was every Memorial weekend we would go to her house after saving the tins of the cans for a few weeks beforehand, and we would go to her home. She would be picking the flags, or we call them iris. She would be picking the snowball bushes, and if there was some roses up by then, we'd be picking roses, and if it was a normal year, there usually would be some available, and many other plants from her garden, peonies especially. And we would be putting bouquets together with some greenery. There was always some juniper there, some holly, and we would create these beautiful bouquets to take to the cemeteries. And usually we would travel to Logan, up there to see that, Centerville. And that would be a wonderful experience with my grandmother. Also, there was many times when I spent time in her yard running around, and she had these strawberries. She planted them under her rose bushes, of all places, as a ground cover, and we had many a morning of fresh strawberries with our cereal because of her. And she would make the fresh preserves, and we were right there with that. And she was from Danish descent, and so it was just this great opportunity to know my grandmother better. And a few years ago we had a family reunion, and before that reunion, that whole week I was thinking of grandmother and all these plants, and didn't even realize what a huge influence she was. And I happen to have a greenhouse in my backyard that's about 1,400 square feet, and I had...
I'm sure, no problem. Everybody's got one of those, right?
one of my hobbies too. I do it for a living, but it's also this hobby.
Yeah.
And I got this like inspiration, Lorene, you need to take some plants to this family reunion up in Albion, Idaho, and share these with your family. And it ended up that as I loaded my Suburban with everything I needed, and then I filled it with plants. Many trays of lilies, like this lily right here, and cranesbill, and iris, and daylilies, and bleeding hearts. And it was summertime, and I had propagated these, not knowing that's what I was going to do with some of them. And I got up there, and everybody was curious, what are those plants for? I waited till after the family meeting, and then I said, I've got some things to say about these plants. Everybody's curious about them, right? Let me tell you about grandmother's influence in my life for plants. And I was able to go through for a few minutes and just share where they were growing in her garden and how I learned about them. And then I said, okay, aunts and uncles, you get to choose first. Choose a handful to go home to your garden, and then cousins join in, and then your families join in. And by the time we were finished, there was only a small handful left, and by the time we left, they were all gone. And the cool thing is since then I've had a few texts and phone calls from cousins saying, I'm in my garden and I'm looking at the plants you gave me for grandmother's garden, and thank you. And it just brought us together, even just for a fun moment.
What was her name?
Florence LaVere Sorensen.
Wow. Well, you know, the funny thing is, so that was your grandmother. I don't know if we've never talked about this. My grandfather, my gramps, his wife, my grandmother that I never met, she died when she was 42. My mom was 14.
Oh.
Her name was Florence.
Florence, yeah.
Really? Wow.
Beautiful.
There's one plant that you introduced me to that I have to admit is now my favorite, and it's an Ito peony peony.
Yes.
And to me, to think that plant, I hate to say this, but that plant's going to outlive me. Okay?
Yes, it will. Those are marvelous.
When is a plant more than a plant? When is a tree more than a tree? Because
they're always more than a plant and more than a tree, and the influence that they give us in our lives. I look around here in this garden and in every garden, and as I drive along, I just realized a few years ago that people don't see the world as I see it. They don't see the earth as I see it. I know that those grapevines over there are going to produce fruit. I know what they're going to look like in the fall. I know that when they're in the winter zone of their life, that what I can trim and what I can't, what I should and shouldn't do. And I know how to seed things out. It influences our lives so much. And you know, you talk about some of these huge trees even that recently in the storms have blown over, and what they've been through, and what experiences they are, who's climbed in them, who sat under them and enjoyed a picnic or enjoyed the shade or took a nap, and what gift that tree is to us, what gift those plants are.
I see parallels between nature and life because it's kind of intermingled, and the fact that these trees are bending, you know, and that they're surviving. And some of these old trees have been through a lot. They've seen a lot. There's a little poem that you say that I just absolutely love. Do you mind sharing that for me?
The name of the poem is either Adversity or Good Timber, depending on which source you look at.
Yeah.
But it goes like this. The tree that never had to fight for sun and sky and air and light, but lived out in the open plain and always got its share of rain, never became a forest king, but lived and died a scrubby thing. The man who never had to toil to gain and farm his patch of soil, who never had to win his share of sun and sky and light and air, never became a manly man, but lived and died as he began. Good timber does not grow with ease. The stronger wind, the stronger tree. The further sky, the greater length. The more the storm, the more the strength. By wind and rain and sun and cold, in trees and men, good timbers grow. Where thickest lies the forest growth, we find the patriarch of both, and they hold counsel with the stars, where broken branches show the scars of many winds and much of life. This is the common law of life. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
My father taught me that poem. When I was young, he would recite poems, and I asked him to teach them to me. And I have all these poems handwritten by him.
Really?
And we would get together and we would memorize them.
Oh my heavens, now that's such a legacy. Chances are you've heard of a Tiffany lamp. What you might not have heard of is this next object that's a Tiffany. Objects with stories are treasures remembered. I'm here with Dr. Micah Christensen with Anthony's Fine Arts. This is a gorgeous, gorgeous stained glass. Now, it looks like it's based on a famous painting.
That's right. Many people will be familiar with this image because it was based on a painting by the German artist Heinrich Hoffmann. This was made by Tiffany Studios in 1893 for the Danbury Baptist Church in Connecticut. It was made at the height of stained glass making in technique, in quality in America by the greatest maker who arguably ever made work in stained glass. Because Tiffany hired some of the best makers and designers, technicians from around the world. Stained glass, it's a dangerous activity. It requires very high temperature and materials, and many of the materials that they were using to make the stained glass are now illegal to work with. So you've got heavy metals like this green, which is a derivative of copper, or the white, which is a derivative of lead. And what you would do is you would use the mordants, which just means it bites into the glass, like arsenic, like mercury, and they would be fired at very high temps. You wouldn't live to a good old age usually if you were making stained glass. There's real texture in this. That's called drapery glass, which is a technique introduced by Tiffany. Some of it stands as far as an inch away from the window itself.
What makes you smile? Spry mouthwash helps me smile. I think it might help you too. Thanks for watching this episode of Jessop's Journal. It's my honor to be able to share powerful, positive, and inspirational stories in music on TV every week, as well as worldwide at jessopsjournal.com. Here's the thing I want you to remember. Everyone has a story. Yes, you have a story. Stories have power. They help us understand each other. With another entry into Jessop's Journal, I'm Doug Jessop.